I was helping my eighth grader with her homework, social studies, and she was reading up on Thomas Jefferson. And I'm going to, how watered down the information is that is whitewashed is just ridiculous. So this lesson is about the real Thomas Jefferson, okay? See, the reality is two things can be true at one time about someone. Yes, Thomas Jefferson helped write the Declaration of Independence. He was the third president of the United States. He helped with the Louisiana Purchase, and he's the founder of University of Virginia, UVA. However, at the end of the day, he owned over 600 enslaved people, okay? And he depended on them to live his life of privilege. Also, what you don't find, and what my daughter did not read, and thankfully she has an educated mother who knows the history of Thomas Jefferson, but they didn't say anything about Sally Hemsley, who was a slave, an enslaved woman. And at the time when Thomas Jefferson started raping this young girl, okay, she was only 14 years old. He lived, and then what happened was they had this long sexual relationship, and she bore him many children while still a slave. Something else you may not know is about Thomas Jefferson is that he wrote that in the Constitution, he wrote all men are created equal, right? But he also wrote a book called Notes on the State of Virginia. And in that book, he claimed that Black people were inferior in intelligence and beauty. Let me reiterate that. For all you history and social study teachers, and you're teaching about Thomas Jefferson and these founding fathers, teach the truth. And let it be a teachable moment that, yes, they may have contributed to the making of our Constitution and expanding of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase, but they were shitty, horrible people as well. Their character was flawed because they owned slaves. And even though he wrote that all men were created equal in the Constitution, what he meant was all white men, because later up he wrote a book called Notes on the State of Virginia, which claimed Black people were inferior in intelligence and beauty. But what really stands out for me is that if Black people were so inferior in beauty, why is it that he had to be raping not only Sally Hemsley, but many other of the female slaves on that plantation, which was called Monticello? The reason I know that he was is one, because slave women were not having consensual love affairs with these plantation owners, these masters. Second of all, he was sleeping around with his female slaves, many of them, is because it was a known joke that Monticello had, quote, white slaves. Or you might be saying, well, why would they say they had white slaves? Well, no, it was just because he had gotten so many of the slave women pregnant that the babies were mulatto, light skinned. And so they looked, and that was just a running joke. Funny to the white man, not to the enslaved. So let's talk about his legacy of harm. Even after death, his debts meant enslaved families at Monticello were sold away from each other. So not only while he was alive did he own slaves, right? Raped the slave women, had a long-standing relationship, not even relationship, a sexual situation with a 14-year-old girl throughout her life. But then even in death, because he had debts to pay and didn't see them as human, because remember, they're inferior in intelligence and beauty, he had to sell them away, separating mother from child, man from woman. This they don't want you to teach. Now, why does it matter today? Because our kids are still learning the polished version of it. They're missing the truth. The myth of Jefferson as a great man without his hypocrisy is dangerous, you all, and it keeps us blind to how racism has been woven into America's foundation. Also, if Jefferson could believe in freedom but deny it to Black people, then the system built in his time still carries those contradictions today. In my opinion, as I think more about it, at first I was getting very devastated at how the president and the administration and many of his followers want to trod on and destroy the Constitution. But now that I look at it, maybe what God is doing is dismantling a Constitution that was written by corrupt, selfish, racist, sexist men. And maybe after this is torn down, God is going to raise up a new administration, a new group of leaders who will rewrite a Constitution that really will believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, where all men and women of all race, creeds, and religions are created equal. Maybe that's what is happening now. But honestly, you all, it's really sad. It's really sad. And it hurt my heart when I read how whitewashed our history is. And now I understand how so many white folk are so ignorant. And they don't want the truth taught. Thus, Project 2025. But if you have any children, please let them listen to this. I hope I didn't curse. If I did, please excuse me. But your kids, please, children today, the rap and stuff y'all let your kids listen to, please. They probably cuss more than you. But Thomas Jefferson, yes, he may have helped with a lot of things. But he didn't care about black people whatsoever. They were just a commodity, chattel, property. And the women were just sexual beings. Y'all be blessed.